So we have got 14 divided by 2, which then makes 7 per row. So we've got 2 rows of 7. But I wanted to look at what would happen with 14 divided by 7 equaling 2. So instead of 2 rows like this, 1 and 2, we would have 7 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And I wanted to look at it in terms of a direct numerical sequence, which is actually a form of transmission of power from the higher to the lower. So we could start out with simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And so we wind up with 2 columns of 7 rows. Okay, so at this point, people are probably wondering what the heck I'm doing here. Well, what I'm looking at is that when we had 14 divided by 2 yielding 7, we wound up with 2 rows of 7. And I was talking about how these could be considered the higher self and the lower self. Here, in this setup, we are looking at what is inner, the inner self, and the outer self. This is what we might consider the soul, or the aspect of the creative part of the self. And this can be considered the body, or the manifested world, what we create for ourselves in our environment. So I wanted to examine this both in terms of the just simply the transfer across horizontally, the transmission from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, so that it's kind of like in a zigzag pattern, as you can see there, and also, of course, adding up the numbers for each column to find the meaning of each column in this layout. So we have 2 numbers per row of 7 rows. 7 is the number of art. So when we combine the numbers in each row, we get 3, 7, 11, 15, 19, 23, and 27. And if we simplify those even further, reduce them down even further, we get 3, 7, 2, 6, 10, which then yields 1, 5, and 9. So what we're looking at is essentially the heart or power of each of these rows. So we have understanding, we have art, we have wisdom, we have perfection, we have the kingdom or the realm of the individual, we have labor and strife, and we have, finally, foundation. All right, so when we add up the columns, I want to point out here that this column, representing the inner aspects of ourselves, is made up of positive numbers, also in occult terms thought of as masculine. But the result that adding it up gets to is 49. Now, what's interesting is that we have order and foundation. This is still an odd number, but when we combine 9 and 4 together, we get another odd number, which is 13. The individual and understanding. When we combine those two together, however, we get an even or feminine number, 4. So we are looking at an inner order that results from this. An inner order that is innately our own, each one of us, individual, unique. Then when we add up this column, we get 56. And again, we go through that transition with labor combined with perfected state or perfection, yielding 11, which is human aspiration. Combining those together, this is an odd number, by the way. Combining them together, we get an even number, which is 2, or wisdom. Then, adding up this column, we get 105. When we add this column, treating this as 10, we get 42. And interestingly, when we add up this column and treat it, the 10 as 1 instead, we get 33. I'm going to switch off hands here because I want to bring this in. We saw that same sequence here. 105, 42, and 33 when we were looking at 14 divided by 2. So now we have 14 divided by 7, and we're still getting the same sequence, 105, 42, and 33.